I lost my white privilege a long time ago. And there really is something that has created something that feels like white privilege, and it's called drug free zones. The Democrat Party created, well, some Democrats from the Confederate soldiers, a small group of soldiers in the Confederate Democrat Party after the Civil War created the KKK. The KKK pushed for prohibition, and it made cocaine illegal. Cocaine was in Coca-Cola way back in the early 1900s, and before that, but around 1915 or somewhere in there, close to that, they pushed. I would say evolutionists probably and the KKK pushed for making cocaine illegal. They pushed for prohibition of alcohol, and so what they did is made the coca leaf itself illegal, and then um, and I feel the scientists, and I feel it's true that the Democrat Party, dumped drugs on black neighborhoods. Right. So there was a point in my life where I ran across I didn't understand the barrier between white and black cultures and having ghettos and all that stuff. And it come to find out, there's lots of drugs in the ghettos. And if you say that, they'll call that racist. And that's a lie. That's to protect making them slaves to cartels. That's the Democrats protecting making the ghettos be slaves to cartels and gangs, violent gangs. And a lot of those slaves, the slave masters are black slave masters, not white slave masters, but a lot of them are Hispanic slave masters, black slave masters, white slave masters. But the real slave master is CNN and MSNBC, in my view, and the Democrat leaders who have the formula that has created all that, right? And so when the Republicans buy into the lie that drugs are of the devil, that the Democrats have falsified, and they've played the trick. They put the strongest forms of the drugs in the streets instead of letting you have the natural plant as a tea or something, and they demonize it. And then they lie and have people steal. The dealers steal from addicts and stuff, and so the addicts don't really spend all their money on drugs like people think. Anyway, there's a domino effect, but there's a bunch of chaos and mayhem. So you lose your white privilege. There is something that's like white privilege, they call it. And black people have it too. They have white privilege too, if they're drug free and all that, and then they're felony free. Or once you lose your name, in a sense, it's like you do have a privilege. Things just build up. You're not around a bunch of people, stuck around a bunch of people that steal from you, that are allowed to steal from you. But in the drug areas, known drug areas, people steal from each other. They're allowed to steal. Stealing is promoted. As a matter of fact, you could get killed if you speak against stealing in the past. Now, some of that's changing. It's changed some. They're aware that stealing is not good, but people are confused because they're always told drugs are bad. And then they don't believe drugs are bad because they're all around them. And they say they aren't as bad as people say they are. But the stealing is as bad as people, is a lot worse than people say. So there's confusion with that. When people say it's wrong to steal, they don't believe that either, because everybody's always talking against drugs, and these people grew up around people who use drugs, and they see it doesn't hurt him, it didn't hurt them, it didn't hurt them, and so they don't believe it. So there is a real danger in drugs. It's no promotion of drugs, but the stealing is the worst thing that happens out there. So I'll do another video on that, but I just basically want to say real quick that yes, you lose your if you have white privilege, if you end up hanging out and you've tried drugs a few times, partying in the ghetto or whatever, trying to make friends with them and believe in the Democrats that they're discriminated against, and you fall for wanting to befriend them and show that everybody's not racist. And then you get caught up in the drugs, partly because, I don't know, you end up liking some of the ladies out there, which is not hard to do, right? So if you're a male, or if you're a woman, it's probably not hard to like some of the men out there, right? So, and assume that they're a victim of racism, because that's a lie. They are a victim of the racist drug laws that the Democrats pushed. And now the Republicans have bought into the lie of drugs being of the devil, and they demonize drugs. And so when they talk bad about people and they won't let people have a second chance because of drugs and stuff like that, a lot of times, or they marginalize supposed drug addicts and all that kind of stuff, that feels racist. So that's the one thing I think that makes people feel like they've been racist against. So that when it comes from the Republican Party, and so it's hard to understand. It's not racism. They actually have hypochondria though, and they've believed the lie about medicine, the lies about medicine, right? When you could just legalize the coca leaf and have 2 leaves in a tea that's not even as strong as coffee, most likely, right? Okay, so then that's so white privilege. If you've never had an issue with drugs or anything, then you've also been protected from being robbed. For the most part, people can get robbed out in public. For the most part, if you're in a drug-free zone, and most white neighborhoods were like that, there's a lot more white people that's caught up in the drug cartels nowadays, and but it didn't be. And there always have been some, but there didn't used to be that much. There used to be that white privilege was literally though from having drug-free zones. Because in the non-drug-free zones, there's theft everywhere. There's shooting over money. There's It's slavery, really. Slavery of going in and out of jail over nonviolent crimes. But then, so that now they've acted like it's not fair for so many people to go to jail. And they're letting people out of jail that do violent crimes. And so the violence has become preeminent. There's a lot of confusion and chaos because they lied about medicine and dumped it, in my opinion, in black neighborhoods mostly. They dumped it in poor neighborhoods, but black neighborhoods. And so there's no miracle drug. Marijuana is not a miracle drug. It's something they've done. Here's a trick they've done. They do that $300 or $400 or $500 fee if you want to get legal marijuana. And so most people, they're glad to see it's legalized because they can go get it cheaper from the streets. And it doesn't matter if they fail a drug test. But most people can't pay that amount to buy the license. So they've made it hard to get the legal venue by making that big, because most people who want to use a medicine are depressed people. The Bible even says it's for poor people to drown their pains and sorrows from poverty, to use a medicine, basically. It alludes to that in Proverbs 31. And so usually it's people who can't afford it to go get that license, or feel they can't afford it and don't save for it. And plus, because if they're getting it from the street, they get robbed, so it's hard to save to get that. And so then they end up getting laced marijuana from the streets and stuff mixed in, fentanyl and different things mixed in their marijuana. And so you have other problems, right? Trank, sometimes it mix coke. So it's I think a good natural medicine in the right form and a safe form, not in the powder form or the crack form. That's too strong a form, and some of it's mixed with other things. And it goes in those forms. If you're snorting it, if you take powder like a pill, it's not going to hurt you as bad. That'll be more gradual. But if you're snorting it, it goes straight into your bloodstream and affects your mental. Let's see, what do they call it? Alters your mentality or whatever. Mind-altering drug. I can't think of the word. Sorry, but it's more mind-altering to an extreme when it goes straight into your blood system, and so that is an escape if you're in a lot of pain. But it's also can be dangerous, and you can make a fool out of yourself or whatever else. You could run out in front of a car and not know it. So, and then it drops you fast, so you can get robbed while you're dizzy. It makes you dizzy quick. They like to do it. The streets will only offer those products in that form because they know they can get you dizzy for a minute. They can rob you, and then everybody's going to believe you spent all your money on drugs. So anyway, but you lose white privilege when you lose your name, and it's not white privilege. It's just human privilege. If you get your name tainted, if you get a felony and this and that, you lose certain privileges so you don't. If you get you can't have a bank account if you're a street dealer or something. Which I've never taken a risk and dealt drugs or anything. I didn't want to take that risk or have that name. That's hard. So once you ruin your name like that, that's hard to overcome too. But there's a lot of people who are bold and they're confident anyway, and it doesn't bother them, right? But there's just a privilege when you're getting robbed. You're somewhere where you get robbed, you get overcharged you got to pay double because you don't have good credit. All those kind of things. There's all those kind of little things to overcome if you get caught up in stuff to where you're allowed to be robbed. You get behind, you lose your name, good name for financial things and all that. And those are privileges that they end up calling white privilege or whatever. But it's just really, in a sense, it's white privilege that we have. I'm white generally, but you have in that there's a higher white population that was drug free, whereas not taken over by cartels. And whereas in the black population, the ghettos a lot of times are taken over by cartels and gangs. And it's not just Hispanic cartels, and it's not just white cartels. It's not just Hispanic gangs or white gangs. A lot of times it's a lot of black gangs and Islamic gangs, and just any anti-government gangs or Democrat gangs or whatever it is. There's a lot of those that enslave black on black slavery, and or who have fallen for the game and the trick and money. It's all about money. It's all about money, and thinking it's sexy to be real, the big hustler, the swindler, and that's a type of thief, really. And so, anyway, but they're qualified to do it because our society hates on addicts, and they shouldn't be. They treat them like they're not human and like it's the worst sin in the world to use a medicine. But when they're being robbed and haven't given strong medicine only and all these things that can affect their mind even more, and then they're put outside to do it on purpose by the dealing groups and by the system on purpose to make it look bad, to make medicine look bad. And so, but medicine does have a place to use. And I'm not promoting medicine. I'm into nutrition and trying to stay off medicine. But this facet of society exists, and it qualifies abusing addicts mostly, and allowing people to enslave addicts, and then acting like it's just the addicts spending all their money. It's the addicts spending all their money on drugs. And if that was true, they would overdose in the first 30 minutes, or even sooner. If they were really spending all their money on stuff like that, you'd see a whole different thing. But when they go out to the streets to get that stuff, they're surrounded by people who are there to intercept it, to steal it, to hold them hostage, and all kinds of things. So that's the truth, and a lot of people won't tell that, and I don't agree. But I've heard a lot of white people say they spend $2,000 on. My experiences are more not hanging out and partying with white people when I have done that, but I've done it where I feel that people are victims of it being dumped in their society. And I'm not just making that excuse, but I don't fit into society and the drug-free side or the drug use side. I don't fit in either side. I'm somewhere in the middle, and I haven't found a good social life in the middle anywhere. You got the haters of that side of society and that side of society hating on this other side of society. I don't fit into either one. So, so I've had a depression time. I've been robbed myself, and needed a break from hearing other people picking on me for being poor or whatever, and acting like it's your fault. That's all your fault. It's your fault. You take responsibility for it. Okay, it's my fault they stole from me. Okay, it's not anybody's fault that they stole from me. They should just be allowed to steal from me anytime they want, and it's my fault. But and then you're just qualifying it. All you're doing is qualifying them doing that. But anyhow, I get tired of hearing it, and so I've chose to hang out with one group or another periodically for a short period of time, and it turns out to be pretty devastating usually, just to pay a visit, frankly. But so there's no privilege though in hanging out with a bunch of thieves, and so, but the culture that claims there's white privilege, they support stealing. And so they've taken away their own privilege by not protecting their own property, although they will kill somebody who steals from them, but they think it's okay to steal from people. That particular culture who always falsifies white privilege. And but they believe it because there is, like I say, there is a remnant of something that looks like white privilege, but it comes from having drug-free zones. But these same people usually that falsify that are the ones pushing the drugs, the illegal forms of drugs, but not just that, but the hustling side of it, and their right to abuse addicts. And so that's addicts and homeless people. They pick on homeless people. They steal from homeless people. They do all that kind of stuff. And they say it's okay, and then they'll blame the homeless person that's how they became homeless, probably, right? So anyway, but they're the ones taking away people's privilege. Anyway. So it exists. I don't think it's fair. Even though they do that, I don't think they're the ones that created that system. They're not the ones who did the prohibition and lies about medicine and I think they should just tell the truth about medicine and make trees, leaves, and teas legal. And the tea forms of medicine is not as strong, and plus it has the natural appetite suppressants and other things you're not going to 10 tea bags and a cup of green tea bags or any kind of tea in one cup, typically. Usually you won't because your stomach doesn't want it. I mean, so you got to understand things are medicine. Coffee is a medicine. It's not a food. It's a medicine. So it's an herb. You got to treat it that way. So you don't believe the lies that it's healthy. How many people have died of a stroke and they say we don't know what caused it? It was probably caffeine, coffee, and dehydration, tea, for too much caffeine, even Mountain Dew. But they don't want to admit that caffeine's a drug, right? And so, because that would make it sound like they won't call it a drug. I call it a drug, they act like I'm trying to excuse all these bad drugs. There's no miracle drug. Marijuana is not a miracle drug. All right. First of all, it's a downer. It's not an upper like caffeine. But there's better ways to do it. Drink it like a tea. Two leaves. Get the most natural form, not the crossbred plants and all that. And then, and if you're like me, you just wouldn't want to do it much at all because I don't like doing. I've tested chamomile. I didn't like it. I didn't like lavender. I don't like downers that have me groggy the next day. All right. So, what works for you works for you. But it's best to stay off of medicine as much as possible. Anyhow, but it's certainly not good to go uncontested. That's why I contest it, because it supports such a huge predator dealing group who is into stealing from people, hurting people, and a lot of predators who have been attracted to the power that brings, and they hate addicts. A lot of them hate addicts. Some of them, I'm not going to say it's all of them, and they're just glad they can have somebody, and a lot of them are just barbarians, and they're just glad they can have somebody they can pick on and hurt if they want to, if they don't get total respect. Total respect, whether it's a false respect or not, you have to obey them. Total obedience. Total, you know what I mean? Not respect, but obedience. Total obedience in their presence. And I'm not saying I'm not saying to disobey these people. I say you obey them and stay alive. If it comes down to them saying deny Christ or else, then don't deny Christ at that point. But if you could stay silent about it and just wait until the next day, and you could share Christ anywhere else you want, it's not really legal for them to kill you, but some of them will if you don't do what they want. All right. There's a whole bunch of them like that. That's what it's ballooned into. And that's human nature anyway, for people to want to be, I'm the man, And so it's not that it's never existed before. It has, even in the early Italian gangs and stuff, I guess, or they call it Italian mafia. There was some of that, but it's way huge in a lot of our ghetto black cultures. And now there's a lot of white cultures that have adopted that ghetto gangsters lifestyle, the drug dealing. There's a lot more than there used to be. White gangs that have maybe come from Antifa or from that used to march with the Democrats. I don't know, but they're out there and they're hurting people now too. So, I mean, I've seen more of it in the last few years. Maybe they've come from overseas or been trained by Antifa or something. But which Antifa is the only white people the Democrat Party likes because they're bad people. They're barbarians. They're bullies. They're haters. They're haters of people. They're haters of God. So the Democrats like those kind of white people. But anyhow, why are the Democrats so bad in this way? Why are they like that? I don't have time to talk about that. Anyway, so I got 2 other videos I want to do, and I'm just now forgetting the title to this. White privilege. Okay. So, but technically, everybody's supposed to have the privilege of being protected by laws like the 10 Commandments. Excuse me. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, don't assault people, kill, don't be violent, don't assault people, don't murder. Now self-defense killing is justifiable if it's proper, if it has to be done, and self-defense in war is justifiable. That's not murder, but we're talking about people who go out to murder and bully people. And for no good reason, and just want to take from people and steal their life and steal from people for no good reason. for no justifiable reason. And so an eye for an eye might be a justifiable reason, but mercy's better, and that should go through the courts too, even though we have messed up courts nowadays. But when it comes to something that big, it should be proven. It should be proven that somebody's guilty, and even intent matters. You got to prove that they didn't do it in self-defense. So, and that they were the right person, that you didn't get the wrong person. All right. So anyway, so everybody should have the privilege of being. If you have a good name, you should have. If you have a good name and no strikes, and it doesn't mean you're always a good person just because you don't have any strikes against you on being bad with your finances or having never been robbed before. And so you go without a car. If you got a car stolen from you, now you're without a car, then you see you get treated differently. It's kind of, people will embarrass you. Some people will treat you pretty rudely because you don't have a car. Those kind of things happen. And then but they want to point at that and say, that's white privilege because I don't have a car. Well, there's black people that have cars, and there's white people that have cars, and there's white people and black people who don't have cars. And there's some who had them and had them stolen. There's some who had them and couldn't make the bill because it's wiser to, purchase things within your means instead of getting something that costs too much. But anyhow, everybody should have the privilege of being protected by the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. You shouldn't be people shouldn't be able to lie against you, and that promotes stealing and killing a lot of times, and loses people jobs and different things like that because people lie, and that's stealing. So that's stealing. And don't commit adultery, don't covet your neighbor's wife, and then I forget the other key ones, but I'm going to go with that because I just wanted to make the point that that's a privilege everybody's supposed to have. But these same people in the Democrat Party who talk about white privilege are against the Ten Commandments. And that's where everybody gets privilege. The Ten Commandments give everybody privilege. It's enforcing the Ten Commandments. Even these people who are for stealing, their property is protected by the Ten Commandments if we're allowed to promote it. And we are supposed to be allowed to promote it in this country, but the Democrats want to silence us promoting it. All right, I'm going to end on that.